We have WRAL documentary investigator Cristin Severance joining us now. And, Cristin, with your documentaries, you tend to do a lot of different topics, very kind of widespread. But there's almost kind of like this internal look with this new documentary you all have coming out. I'll read for the viewers at home a little bit on this. As newsrooms shrink, media companies consolidate, and communities lose access to trusted local information, a new WRAL documentary explores what is at stake for North Carolina. Left Uncovered, Inside North Carolina's News Deserts is the new documentary. It premieres Wednesday, June 10th at 7:30 p.m. You can watch that WRAL-TV, WRAL.com, wherever you get WRAL, including right here on the YouTube channel. So, Cristin, you're joining us now to talk through this doc a little bit. And, I mentioned the wide range of topics that you do, and this is really kind of like almost an internal reflection on this industry that you have spent so much time in. Why do that? Why, it feels like there's a lot of kind of inside baseball stuff here that people may not be familiar with. Why do a doc on this topic?
So we care a lot about this, right? I personally have dedicated my entire professional life to being in local news, to being a journalist. So I believe in local news, but really this is not about us at all. This was a look at why other people should care, why communities should care. This is something that's been happening really for the last 20 years. So the decline of newspapers and this rise of consolidation, broadcast mega mergers. And what's really unique is that WRAL, we are a locally owned station.
Right.
So we're owned by a family. People who live in this community, love this community. Our owners, their offices are here. We see them. Every single decision they make, they think about, the station and the community. And so we were in this really unique position to do this. We are not part of a huge corporation. As we get into in the doc, 3 companies own, the majority of TV stations, of all local TV stations. And so I don't think you could do this documentary if you worked for one of those big conglomerates. Because why would they want to point out, an issue that many people believe is harming the news? So I think we were the people to do this. Again, we care so much about it, but really it's about what happens in communities, when a news source goes away.
Right. There are, I think, foundational kind of stories that are covered. And this to me is kind of one of those, because the information that you take in is so important to how you understand the world around you, and how and the where and the who and the what and the why of that information is incredibly important. You talked a little bit about the ownership changes. You talked just about ownership in general for these local broadcast companies. Do you get much into the recent changes we've seen over the past year or so, especially on the local TV angle of it?
Yes, we absolutely do. So this was probably the toughest part because we understand this so well as people who work in this business, and we've worked for many companies before, coming here to WRAL. We understood it. My goal was to tell this story, produce this documentary in a way that anyone watching would say, okay, I understand it and I actually care about it. Oh, and wait, why maybe do I not want one company owning every single station? And so we talk about how, for years and years, there were many different owners of TV stations, right? There were many local owners. Well, over time, that has changed. And over time, rules within the FCC, they have changed as well. So really, you could only own, in 1983, 7 stations. Well, then that changed, and that changed. And now, again, you have many companies owning many stations. And the largest owner of TV stations, Nexstar, they want the rules to change again. And they want to be able to buy the 3rd largest company. So Nexstar wants to buy the station, the TV group, Tegna. There's been a big lawsuit to try to stop that. States, including North Carolina, Attorney General Jeff Jackson, who's in the documentary, filed a lawsuit to stop that because they believe this really, violates federal antitrust laws. And we get into really what that means and why they believe they have a case. Next are pushing back. They said at the National Association of Broadcasters meeting in Las Vegas this year, Perry Soka is the CEO. He said, look, broadcasters need size to compete with streaming. We are not, we are not this huge behemoth. Perry Soka said even DirecTV is twice the size of us. He said buying stations, we are going to save these stations. Others say, well, no, you're not. Because if you buy a Nexstar station and a Tegna station in the same community, well, chances are you're going to merge them. Mm-hmm. You don't need all of the people in this station and all of the people in that station to be working because you're going to have overlap, right?
Right.
So a judge has decided to put the merger on hold, review everything. Many people still believe that's going to go through. We're going to see what happens with there. But that's just one story of many within local news. I mean, that's just the broadcast part of it. We get into so much more.
Right. There's one kind of part that stood out to me from what I've seen, where you speak with someone who has like a lot of local newspaper experience, and they say, oftentimes these large corporations, you're beholden to more of like the stakeholders of those companies and not so much the communities that these individual, whether it's broadcast stations or newspapers cover.
Right.
That was really powerful. And kind of going off of that, right? We've talked a lot about broadcast so far, but when I think of news deserts, oftentimes I'm thinking of local newspapers, especially ones that have been hit really hard with just kind of the move to online advertising and things along those lines. So how much do you dig into newspapers in this documentary?
We really spend a good bit of time looking at newspapers because that came first, right?
Right.
Your news desert, it can be many different forms of media, but the change really started with newspapers and really the decline of newspapers over the last 20 years or so. And you're right. I mean, it really started with, hedge funds buying up these newspapers and then also consolidation. So we look at two direct examples of that. And we met a former publisher in Tarboro. John Walker is his name. He's really the heart of the documentary. He was brought in 2012. He was known as a turnaround guy. He worked decades as a newspaperman, brought in to kind of bring up circulation, bring up revenue. And he said they were well on their way to doing that when a corporate owner pulled the plug and closed that newspaper, the Daily Southerner, in Tarboro. This was in 2014 is when they closed. And he talks about that. He said, a corporate owner, and they were based in Alabama, they think they know how you should run the newspaper in your community because it worked somewhere else. And he said, but it never does. And he said, and if you really look, the idea of where they got it from, most likely didn't work there either. And I think many of us who have worked for these big companies can completely relate. Sometimes you are told you are given a corporate mandate from somewhere totally across the country. And even us as journalists, we're not running these stations. You may think, well, there's no way that's going to work. This mandate from D.C. is not going to work in Oregon.
Right.
But sometimes you have no choice, and these stations have to do it. Right. And so it really... I loved talking with him. He has so much passion still for journalism. He's in his 70s. He never left Tarboro. He and his wife stayed, and he's trying to fill the news desert today. And we'll get into how he's doing that. He was super inspiring. I thought doing this doc would be very depressing given the changes of our industry, but people like John Walker are so inspiring. And I hope they make other people care, and I hope people are looking up his site. It's called My Tarboro Today. He's covering the entire community, by himself.
We've kind of hit these headlines with this kind of story, right? These giant corporations, the potential mergers, the things along those lines. Let's really kind of go at a really small level here. Just kind of circle back. People who may not be familiar with the industry. When we say news desert, What does that mean?
A news desert is a place with no original source of local news. And so your newspaper went away, your public media station went away, either NPR, PBS. You have zero source of local news. And what's interesting is there are researchers dedicated to studying this. The News Desert Project started at UNC. A woman by the name of Penny Abernathy, who's in the documentary, she really started it. And years and years spent looking at what happens in these communities, not just in North Carolina, all across the country. The project has since moved to Medill. Mm-hmm. They are continuing the work. They don't just look at newspapers. They're looking at, digital. They're looking at radio, looking at public media. And this year they're adding local TV stations to the project. And so that is a news desert. Of course, my first question when I interviewed the researchers, because it can be such a big topic. Well, what happens to these communities? Well, they've studied it. When a community loses a newspaper or a news source, taxes go up, corruption goes up, voting goes down. And so there is a real impact on the place you live when no one is there to really cover the stories.
It's that watchdog element of what, the press is supposed to be.
Right.
And the direct impacts of not having someone who is shining a light on dark places. It's fascinating that the research has like these direct correlations.
Oh, yes.
That's cool to see. Now, you said, you were expecting to come into this and be like, oh my gosh, like totally overwhelmed with kind of the trend of where all this is going doing this documentary. But it sounds like you do have some hope. Where does that come from?
Absolutely. So John Walker, again, he is the heart of the documentary, former publisher, now doing a digital site. I mean, again, in his 70s.
What was the name of the website again?
My Tarboro Today.
There you go.
You can also find it. We linked all these resources. Just search Left Uncovered on our site, WRAL.com. So he is one of those standalone people, but there are many groups really interested in this. There is a really fascinating group called JFP, Journalism Funding Partners. The former publisher, one of the former publishers of the NNO, Orridge Quarles III, interviewed him for the doc. He is a founding board member. So they connect donors with journalism organizations. So let's say there's a group who thinks, you know what, I want more religion stories. Mm-hmm. Well, they will fund a reporter's salary. Now, the funder has no say in the content. They can't read the content, but they do know that that reporter will do 50 stories a year. We have some JFP funded positions at WRAL, niche positions. We have a health reporter. We have an environmental reporter here through that partnership. So that's just one, organization really working on things. There's a group called NC Local. I mean, there are big national funders. I mean, Google has put in, millions of dollars. So there are people really trying. It's a start, right? It's just so hard to wrap your mind around the changing, or just how much money was lost when all the ad revenue changed.
Right.
In newspapers, it was classifieds to Google. TV, you don't just watch TV, right? You're on all these different platforms. So all that ad money goes everywhere. YouTube. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I think I'm listening to Dan Haggerty in the documentary. One thing he said was, back in the day, you had two places to watch the news, the 6 o'clock and the 11 o'clock. And because of that, those ad spots were incredibly valuable because you knew a lot of people were going to be watching. But just with the way that so much news in general has just kind of been divided up amongst all these platforms, because you kind of have no other choice because of all these different changing within the industry, it puts you in a tough spot where you're just trying to find ways for people to see oftentimes the really good work that's being done. Yes, and we are on all those platforms, of course, but it's just the ad dollars are spread out everywhere. And again, as we are on YouTube right now, right? The platforms are the ones making the money. The journalists are forced to use the platforms to get our work out there and to find an audience. So yeah, we're all just trying to figure it out together.
It's a complicated story, but I'm glad that you have some optimism coming out of all of this.
Absolutely.
Cristin Severance, thank you so much for being here, for joining us. Really looking forward to watching this doc. I know everyone here watching right now, I hope you get a chance to. You can watch it, maybe at this point when you're watching it right on YouTube. You can also catch it wherever you watch WRAL, whether that be on TV. That is once again on June 10th at 7:30 p.m. You can also watch it on the WRAL News Plus and wherever you stream WRAL, as well as on the WRAL YouTube page. Thank you so much again, and thank you all for watching.